Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about Grayscale Buys Amp. Will institutions jump on AMP in 2022? Because that's the real question we want to ask. For those of us who have been invested in AMP for a long time and are tired by the price action of AMP, then this video might be for you, because it finally really looks like the institutions are getting some interest in AMP with the current rebalance, the latest rebalance that Grayscale did, in adding AMP to their index fund. So if you're curious about the signs I see, where the vision is, and what the signs and vision that these big players might see, then you might want to stick around for this video. But other than that, I want you to do this one favor for me. It's not going to cost you a dime, but I just want you to smash that like button and that subscribe button to really help the YouTube algorithm push this video out more for those of us who are invested in AMP. So once you've done that, let's jump into the video. I'm really going to keep this article in the pinned comments below, but Grayscale adds Flexa Amp to DeFi fund, and they remove BNT and UMA in the quarterly rebalancing. If you don't already know, Grayscale is the world's largest digital asset manager, and they have to do these rebalancing every so often in order to keep things fresh, right? So Grayscale is basically owned by Digital Currency Group, which is also the parent company of CoinDesk. Now, CoinDesk launched their own CoinDesk DeFi Index Fund, DFX, in July, and at the same time, Grayscale also announced that they have this own Grayscale DeFi fund. So basically, we can say that Digital Currency Group or Grayscale owns CoinDesk, which owns this fund. Now, the quarterly reconstitution, the rebalancing of the DFX, resulted in the removal of 2 cryptos and the addition of 1. So basically, they removed Universal Market Access and BANCOR. They removed that from the index, and Flexa Amp was added. So it looks like they really just sold UMA and BANCOR, and they took the proceedings and put that into AMP. So if you look at the components after the rebalancing, they have the following. They have Uniswap at 42%, Aave at 13%, Curve at 10%, Maker at 8.99%, AMP at 7.39%. That is a huge shift into AMP. Like, they also have Urine Finance at 6, Compound at 5, Synthetics at 3, and SushiSwap at 3 as well. So this holding, this distribution, you can see that a lot of them are blue chips, like Uniswap, Aave, Curve, MakerDAO, Urine, Compound, and SushiSwap. They're all kind of blue chips. I mean, like SushiSwap and Synthetics. You can argue about that, but the rest, they are here to stay, basically. We don't see them as projects that are just going to drop off. And adding AMP into that is a big confidence boost in the direction that AMP is going. They also have a large cap fund, and the large cap fund also have kind of the same thing. Most of it is in Bitcoin, Ethereum. They have Solana, Cardano, both at 3% and 3.5%. Uniswap, Chainlink, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. So a lot of these are blue chips in themselves, and seeing that they have Uniswap in both their DeFi fund and their large cap fund, this says something about Uniswap, and also Chainlink and Solana at 3.56%. So these projects might be projects that you might want to buy yourself on the dip. We also have to note that neither the DeFi fund nor the digital large cap fund generates any income. So they both regularly distribute fund components to pay for expenses. That means that over time, the amount of these funds components will gradually decrease. So why did they sell UMA and BANCOR? Well, UMA is kind of like infrastructure to allow users to deploy and trade synthetic assets on the Ethereum blockchain. Anyone can create collateral-backed synthetic assets on chain, including S&P 500, Tesla stock, things like that. Whereas BANCOR is basically a decentralized exchange, much like Uniswap and Kyber. And I'm just gonna be frank, I haven't looked too deeply into either UMA or BNT, but from the looks of it, from research on CoinGecko, from really brief research, they do exactly the same thing as, let's say, Synthetics and Uniswap. So having them gone from the DeFi index fund isn't really going to do any harm. And it also makes sense to sell them and get more exposure into AMP, because what AMP does is it acts as collateral when people uses the Flexa Network to pay with digital currencies. And that collateral is meant to protect merchants from any sorts of fraud. So that kind of niche is something that Grayscale didn't have exposure to yet. So getting some exposure into that, assuming that while we all know that digital currencies is going to be the thing, people are going to be transacting with that. People are already transacting in that. So just getting ahead of the game is a very smart move. We see more and more people getting more and more into crypto. We see businesses now adopting crypto and partnering with Flexa because they want to allow their customers to be able to pay using digital currencies. So this move for Grayscale makes a lot of sense, which really, if you're holding AMP right now, you should be more confident than before because the future looks bright from my eyes. Now, AMP, if you don't already know is a very, very long hold. And I really like the project, but the problem is that it's on Ethereum, and doing anything with it like staking is going to cost you an arm and a leg and gas fees, right? And also with its price action, it's basically been staying in the same zone forever. So it's really hard to make money on AMP unless you're trading it. And because it has such a big supplies, we have a lot of new investors who are weak hands who don't know anything about cryptos investing into AMP. And if they don't see their Maserati by tomorrow, then they sell it. So basically what we have is retail investors come in to pump it during the bull market, and immediately once they see that red candle, which we will always see, they immediately sell it. So they're making losses because remember, the majority loves to buy the tops and sell the bottoms. But that also kind of puts this little pressure on AMP to stay in the price zone that it is in for the last 6 months. Hopefully with Grayscale getting into AMP, this is going to change in a bit, but I don't see it changing by, let's say, next week. So if you don't know who Grayscale is, they're basically the fund that owns the most Bitcoin at 3% of the BTC supply. So they own about 653,000 Bitcoin. So that's incredible. It's more than the Chinese government, Block 1, and Wrap BTC combined, I believe. So they own quite a bit. And you see something funny here? You see that the US government is always against Bitcoin, but they hold like 70K in Bitcoin. That is hilarious. What that basically means is that you watch what these big players are doing. Like the Chinese government, the US government might put news that they're against Bitcoin and all that stuff, but they're clearly holding Bitcoin. So what does that tell you? That tells you that you should probably follow their action and hold some Bitcoin too. But following Grayscale is not a bad idea because they are so good at investing, finding the right investments. And since they are putting their money in AMP, then you should probably follow where they go with the direction of AMP. It seems like they have experience picking out winners. So at this point, I really want to talk about the vision of AMP and Flexa because they are so early. So I want us to use the example of credit cards. Credit cards really came out, I think, with the Diners Club back in the 1950s. And you can imagine that when the first credit cards came out, not a lot of people used them, right? It was only with decades of use and experience that people finally replaced holding cash for credit cards. I don't hold cash anymore. I just use credit cards. So what we can really think of is this is a credit card revolution, right? But in order for that to happen, we need huge crypto adoption, which is hard because as far as I know, as far as I read, only 6% of the American population has crypto addresses. So really only 6% of people are in crypto. So that kind of makes it difficult for Flexa and AMP to really get started when we have such a small adoption. But when adoption grows, we can really expect that Flexa and AMP will also grow as well. So the short point I want to make is, do you have the vision? You have to ask yourself the question, do you have the vision that digital currencies will replace the way that we transact right now with credit cards and cash? And whether you are willing to wait for that to happen. So the technical analysis for AMP is great because I never have to redraw this graph because the price just keeps on going within the same zones. So if you take a look at this, basically, we have broken down the 786 with the previous Fibonacci that I drew, which is the stronger one. So this Fibonacci here is, you could say, the stronger Fibonacci. So this 786 line, which was at 45 cents, has been broken. So really, it is not in a good place, to be honest. If you're going to buy, which I won't suggest, I would suggest just holding and seeing what happens right now. The market is very indecisive. So you don't want to make moves when the market is like this. So we're going to take a look if it breaks 4 cents. If it breaks 4 cents, then the next level is shortly going to be 3.5 cents basically, because you can see that this 883 level in this Fibonacci is a very strong zone. There was some little flips between support and resistance here, and this further acted as a big resistance over here in February. So this 886 at 3.5 cents is a very strong point for it to go bounce again if it falls to that point. If it goes under that point, then the next level is going to be, let's say, 2.5 cents. So that is going to be very scary, and I'm going to be very fascinated at what the market is going to do, because again, this is an altcoin, right? AMP is an altcoin. It's being led by the price of BTC, and BTC is not in a good place right now. It's at 42K and it's trying to figure itself out. So right now, I would just hold. And if you really want to buy, then maybe set some limit orders at 3.5 cents. Other than that, for now, I am not touching this, but you can do what you want, because I'm not a financial advisor. You should definitely do your own research and do your own due diligence before making any investments into AMP or cryptocurrencies. Alright guys, that's all I got for today. If you want to learn more about technical analysis, how I do Fibonacci and all that stuff, you can check out the link below on IM Academy in the pinned comments and the description below, or you can even schedule a time with me using the calendar link and I could talk more about that with you. But other than that, if you've enjoyed this video, if you learned something today, then please be sure to give this video a like and a subscribe. Check out these other videos on cryptocurrencies and passive income. And remember guys, stay humble, stay patient, stay focused, and stay disciplined. See you next time.